Welcome to Pressure Point. I'm Brad Newcombe. We all love to laugh, and laughter is a healing thing for the most part. And yet when we think about spirituality and meditation, different practices like that, we rarely think of humor, and yet many believe the two go hand in hand together. With me to talk about spirituality and humor is Shelagh MacKinnon, who is a Interchurch minister and a humorist, and it's good to have you here.
Thanks.
Okay, Shelagh, the first thing I'd love to say is, well, tell me a joke, because we're talking about spirituality and humor. But comedy, of course, is sometimes, when it works well, it works really well. When it bombs, it really bombs. So I guess to start off with, laughter is a healing thing, is it?
Yes, laughter can be healing, and it's often healing. But just to correct something that you said, it's not a good start, I know, to an interview to correct the host.
That's okay,
Brad,
that's fine, okay. Actually not bad at all.
It's comedy and humor are two different things. Tell me a joke is like comedy.
Okay.
Like a comedian stands up and tells you a joke. Someone who relies on humor as part of their spiritual discipline has a different perspective than my goal here is a joke, therefore my goal is laughter.
Okay, so when I said I felt like asking you, say, could you tell me a joke at the beginning, I was looking for comedy.
I think so, that's right. And so people sometimes make that mistake, that if you say someone is using humor as part of their toolbox of spiritual resources, that therefore they're going to be lots of little jokes, lots of one-liners, that as soon as by now I should have you laughing.
But I mean, when I think of somebody having a good sense of humor, I think of somebody who makes me laugh.
That's right, but they may not be telling jokes. And on their bad days, as we all have bad days, their humor may be their resource to them, like the other disciplines you talked about at the opening, meditation, prayer. For them, for me, humor is one of those things I pull out of the toolbox that helps me cope with life. And on a good day, it may be that I would be able to tell you a joke, and on a bad day, it may mean that I don't do that. But inside me, I still know that humor is a resource, and so that I'm still going to be looking for a way to use it to help me cope with whatever life handles me.
Okay, can you give me some examples?
I can. I can give you an example from my own life.
Okay.
Which was in sort of from the very worst experience of my life to lots of little ones. I've known that one of the ways I'm going to cope with this is humor. So that when I was quite young, in my early 20s, a terrible thing happened to me. I was kidnapped by a serial rapist. I mean, there's nothing funny about that at all. But in the time that I healed from that, some of the things that were constants in my healing were my faith in God and humor. I mean, and also my family and support. And so for me, that humor became like, what is it that is not just telling a joke? I mean, when you're recovering from something like that, you're not telling jokes, but it comes out of my faith for me, so that if I know that life is good and that it ends up okay, so that conditions all of your life.
I mean, you're right, you don't tell jokes about an experience like that, but also, I mean, just what you have said, you said you were kidnapped by a serial rapist, and then you're talking about being able to access your own sort of humor.
Yeah.
Can you say more? I mean, they just don't go together, Shelagh.
No, they do. And the way they go together is the way any other discipline you've worked on goes together with the experiences life hands you. So that, just for a minute, lift humor off and say that your way of coping has been prayer or jogging or meditation, and something catastrophic happens to you. On those days, you're not making new choices, how am I going to handle stuff? You're going to pick right out of the toolbox you've already got assembled of coping things, the stuff that gives your life meaning and purpose and the way you handle. So you're going to go for a run or meditate or pray.
And because that is built in, so that even when it doesn't come easily, it's there.
That's right. Okay. It's a way, and I would think that's how I would talk about the combination of spirituality and humor, is that humor isn't necessarily belly laughs every day of your life, but it's a decision to access joy even on the worst days of your life.
Can we go back to the worst day of your life?
Yes.
And that experience? Can you say a little bit more about that, and then the healing process for you? With which you're talking about humor, somehow, which I need to hear more about.
Yeah. What was for me the recognition factor wasn't during the very worst of that experience, but by about halfway through it, when I began to think, I'm actually going to survive this.
And how long were you kidnapped for?
Well, I was in the hospital following being found, and so the whole experience went on for months.
Months and months.
And then I went into courts, and that was difficult too.
Right.
So the first experience, and then the survival, physical survival, was followed by a long process of figuring out psychic, emotional, and physical survival. And somewhere about the halfway point, I began to realize certain things are really helpful for me. Other things wouldn't have been. And one of the things that was helping me heal was humor. And that's probably most remarkably because I'm from a family that uses humor every day of their lives, so that we bond as a family around jokes. We help hold up our self-esteem as MacKinnons around jokes.
Right, okay.
We do all those things. We use humor on all our good, great days, so that on the day when it seems like the bottom has fallen out of our world, we still have some things we hold constant. Bach, prayer, music.
Can you give me an example of how you held humor as having healing from being, kidnapped by a rapist? How you held humor from that?
Well, I think that it seems inexplicable, but I can make a parallel that might be helpful.
Okay.
Which is black humor.
Right.
Which is very particular to a situation. Right. Doesn't make sense to anybody outside the little group, so that different groups in the hospital, say, have humor that only makes sense to other transplant surgeons.
Right, okay.
Okay, so that in that context, in that little circle of people who held my soul together, there were parts that were humorous. And it seems inexplicable. And I could never say to somebody else, you've had a tough experience, make a joke of it. I mean, it didn't work that way. No one told me to. It just happened. I realized that in spite of it all, my mom and I were laughing together. And just as she had probably through all the other extraordinary circumstances of her life. So that's how it worked. And that's when I began to think, this is more than just laughing at a funny movie. This is part of a wonderful thing inside of me that I believe is from God, that goes right through life with me.
And is humor a way of sort of almost, it's a way when we can't come to terms with, there are some things that just don't make sense, and so one of the only ways to sort of prevent them from having complete power over us is learning to be able to laugh?
Oh yeah, of course. Humor gives you back the power. Gives you some of the power back.
And also in situations that are just so stressful. I mean, I know of people who work in intensive care wards, or people who deal with high stress situations, life and death issues, and even in the context of funerals and so on. Mm-hmm. When we're presented with something that is so difficult to deal with on a day-to-day basis, that you have to find some way of helping to deal with it.
Yeah, humor is a fabulous coping skill.
But I mean, we're nervous about it. But I'm nervous at the same time of sort of saying any specific examples, because then it can seem so.
That's right.
Irreverent.
It can, and it can also seem to trivialize the experience, which is why it's okay for me to say.
Right.
Because I was in that situation, this is how I handled it, because I'm not trivializing it, I never will. But I do know what was wonderful is that I was able to come through it, and looking back, I realized that humor wasn't just incidental.
And humor was a big part of your healing.
Absolutely, and it's a part of how I view life. So that I didn't know that before. Now other people may have known that, but I'm not sure that people do think of humor as being as integral to our spirit as prayer or music.
Well, I don't think they do, because anytime anytime, it sounded like I hardly ever went. Most of the time when I've been associated with churches, there's very little laughing.
I know.
Or any other religious groups. And it seems like laughing is something that is not, it's not permitted.
I know.
And if you do it, I don't know why, because I think laughter is great. I love to laugh. I'm almost laughing right now, but that's just because I like to laugh.
I think it's because people didn't think Jesus had a sense of humor. I'm a Christian, and masses of people say Jesus never made a joke. Like, how could he ever do that? He was more religious than that. He's more holy than that.
Who wants that holy? That kind of holy? Well, I don't.
Whoops.
I don't.
But you see, I know that people, when I obviously love to laugh in church, and I go there lots. I'm there lots, and people say, well, you missed your calling. Like, if you want to laugh, You shouldn't be in church with Christians who have, you know, trying to find out their meaning and purpose in life. You should be at yuck-yucks with people drinking beer.
Right.
That's just like extraordinary to me that we could banish laughter from the churches. Sad
And of course,
comment.
Jesus had to laugh because he was human. And,
Of course.
and
And he made jokes.
yeah.
And just the fact
And-
that they're hard to translate in our culture.
And you couldn't travel around with so many, you know, I mean, not totally competent people and not have something funny happen.
That's right. Yes, that's good.
Because they weren't. I mean, let's face it, they weren't competent.
Exactly.
I mean, they screwed up. They wrote the stories about themselves. And they probably tried to make themselves look good.
But we have this notion they try to make themselves look good. Oh, Brad. Well, we have this notion that to be religious is to be kind of gently humming through life, that you'd never actually crack up with a belly laugh. And at the same time, you'd also never weep loudly in public. So I think that the freedom to do both is really to be coveted for us all.
And both are signs of passion, really, and enjoyment. If you can cry and you can laugh.
It's a sign of being fully alive, yes.
Yeah. Of course, there's that wonderful part of Ecclesiastes, you know, a time to be born, a time to die, and then a time to weep and a time to laugh.
That's right. And there's a very sad possibility that you have this moment you think, I'll never laugh again, you know, in a time of grief.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's been there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's
but
been
you
a
know,
little while, a couple of weeks for me, so I've forgotten now.
yeah, but
But it's true, we do. We get so down that we think that we won't.
That's right. And on those days, hearing other people laugh can be just flat out annoying, because you think, like, haven't you heard the world has fallen apart?
Yeah, how come you can laugh and my laughter's gone?
That's right.
And the same thing happens in other situations too. I mean, when someone in our family or a close friend is diagnosed with a serious illness, or we ourselves, there's that, you know,
Yeah.
the whole world suddenly is colored in a different shade.
And one of the fabulous things, the wonderful thing about the 90s is that in a wide variety of disciplines, they're now saying, if that's happened to you, make sure you avail yourself of humor resources as much as you would of vitamins. So go to the video store and rent movies that you know will make you laugh. For me, there's that moment where the laughing hyena in Lady and the Tramp,
Oh yeah.
when he's in a cage in the zoo or whatever, and he's like doubled, or he can hardly hold himself up. He's laughing so hard. Like every time I see that, if I'm feeling really sad, I'll just smile. If I'm doing okay, I'll laugh out loud.
Right.
And it's really neat to know what are those resources, just like people would know what their comfort foods are. What's your comfort comedic video? What's your comfort from Mark Twain?
Right. Mine is Fraser. I love Fraser.
See?
I love Fraser.
So now, like, ever since Norm Cousins did all that work about getting well with laughter, like, we know that when you laugh, every cell in your body laughs. And that's such a healthy, wonderful energy that's freed up. And so that's part of now how you cope. And I think that's a larger recognition of that link between spirituality and humor.
I think it sounds like it's good to link them too, because we often, as I said, didn't think that spirituality had anything humorous or funny, or but the two are deeply linked.
Yes, I think that one of the saddest things is to judge that somebody is superficial because they're funny,
Right.
and they're deep because they're not.
Oh, right. The deep means dull, sort of thing. You know
that's
what I mean?
right. That's right.
I mean, so I think it's a horrible judgment.
Yes, but it's very common in the religions,
religious
I
circles,
think.
in different faith groups.
I think
That's
so.
right, because often serious means, I don't know why, I don't know where that came from. It's obviously a long way back.
It certainly is, yeah.
Now, at the same time, we know that there can be laughter that is at someone's expense, too. I mean, we've talked about, there's healing laughter, but there's also times when we laugh and we really aren't laughing.
Yeah, we're jeering.
Say
That's
a little more
right.
about those kinds of things.
Well,
There's a mean-spirited humor as well. I mean, there's the kind of humor we've been talking about, which is healing and healthy, and it also enables us to sort of access our own joy in difficult times. There's also humor which has a mean spirit. Say a little more about that.
Yes, and that's, I mean, the humor that's my community against yours, at your community's expense, is the humor that is against a third party that neither one of us knows, or it's just the sarcastic jibe, and in that we may have scored a victory, and that's when you're completely in the world of comedy, because that's when your goal is just laughter, so that and it may be some vent of some horrible negative negative dynamic happening inside. But it's nothing to do with kind of good humor in the whole integral sense, because it's just spewing the worst of negativity. And it's very cruel.
And because it's hurting somebody else.
It hurts. And then
or
when
another
people
community.
protest, instead of saying, yeah, you're right, I don't like you, they say, what, can't you take a joke? Don't you have a sense of humor? And then person is kind of disarmed. So humor, it's as I see it, humor wouldn't do that. I mean, the proper use of humor, but like anything, it has a negative side. And the underbelly of humor is sarcasm, or jokes at someone's expense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a whole range of jokes.
And sarcasm, I read somewhere one time, it means, it is from its Greek word, the Greek root of the word sarcasm means to tear flesh, which is what it does.
And that has nothing to do with silliness and joy. I mean, no, I mean, it's just like a totally different thing.
What about, can people get a sense of humor? I mean, are we born with our sense of humor, or is this something, like you've talked about it as a discipline?
Yes.
But I can see some people, just everything seems to come naturally, that seems to be something that they never really had to work at, and other people wonder, where is that sense of humor deep down in there?
Very deep in there. But
Well,
you know, there's
bring it
people.
out.
You know, there's people you're with,
Yeah.
and when you think I'm having lunch with
Yeah.
whoever, you know you're going to laugh more
Right.
because that person laughs.
Right.
So has your sense of humor changed? Like if it was something innate that we couldn't encourage and develop,
Right.
you wouldn't laugh more with them than with that person.
Right.
You would always be constant. But in fact, we know that it's true. You can visit some people, and no matter what's happened, the crop has been lost, there's been, you know, there's a torrential storm outside, there's something humorous. The
Right.
way they handle it is they use spirituality as a resource. So then we can develop that within ourselves. We can start saying to ourselves, there must be a way to handle this with humor. We're used to handling things with sarcasm. We're used to handling things with alcohol.
So, okay, now how do we do that? And if you can do this in a short period of time, I don't think you need to worry about yuck. You'll just have developed something that's far bigger
That's
than
right.
that.
I will be rich.
Very rich. You'll be sitting by a pool somewhere.
They say if you want to become a rich person, hang around rich people. I think the same thing works with people using humor. If you want to learn how to use humor in life to make your life a more joyful experience, hang around other people using humor and do it with a discipline. Do it to learn. Find out what it is that they're doing, because it isn't innate. I believe there may be a gift there, but that any one of us can take what's inside us and make it grow.
But I bet people don't know what makes. I mean, I bet once people get to be kind of full of humor and be able to, I like your thing about accessing, being able to sort of find joy, find smile, find something in even the darkest days. And that doesn't mean you're not crying and you're not acknowledging it. But I bet they don't know how they get it, those people, do they?
I mean, it just happens?
I don't know.
Like gravy with meat, Brad?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think some people, yeah, but people can say you're lucky or you're not. In fact, they find out the people who are lucky are the people who make better decisions, you know, remarkable. And I think that people who laugh more may have made the decision to do that.
Right, okay.
Quote, Abraham Lincoln said that most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be.
Oh, that's interesting.
So if you make up your mind to laugh more tomorrow than you did today, it'll happen. If you make up your mind to laugh less, it won't matter who walks in next. You won't laugh more.
Right.
So that's how it's linked. I think the other thing about humor, though, is there's something that's really spontaneous that is perhaps innate or that is to be nurtured and cultured. But that doesn't mean that they're the only people who get to laugh. Like, that would be such a loss. Like, the only people who can paint, people born Picassos, the rest of us can't take classes. Not true.
No, and that's right. We're all painters. We're all sculptors. We're all singers. We're all actors. And we're all people who laugh.
We're all,
with
that's
people
right.
with humor.
We're all born with humor. And we just need to decide to make it grow, to access that.
So I think it's interesting when you talk about we're going to be able to, at those difficult times, like the thing is that once we have developed that, like most days, sort of one day runs into the next, and, you know, that's good. It's life. But then there are those times when crises hit, and that somehow it's then that everything we've practiced on those days, which didn't seem like all that much,
That's right.
suddenly, how would you say it, pay.
That's
A
right.
dividend. It's kind of like a dividend, isn't it?
It is. That's the day the dividend is paid, because you've done the disciplined homework, and that's when it all pays off, because you've already sat down with the people who seem to have more joy in life, and you've watched and you've learnt and you've seen where you shut down, they've stayed open an extra 30 seconds. Where you've stopped appreciating nature, they're still seeing the blooms on the trees. Whatever it was that you had to learn. And that's the wonderful gift of it all. And then when the crunch comes, you've got something to turn to.
Can you say a little bit about how the humor has impacted your work as a United Church minister? Just how that has, because I mean, often we've talked about church, we've talked about Jesus, we've talked about life crises. How does it work in terms of ministry?
I think if you don't have a sense of humor, do I have to finish a sentence?
You have to finish the sentence. You'd never get anywhere.
No, I don't think you'd last, not really alive, vitally alive. And I mean, on Sunday, I forgot to take the collection. You know, that's a really big mistake to make as a minister. So I had to tell everybody.
Very big mistake.
I told them the doors are locked, you cannot leave. And so it's good to not, it really does help you when you're working with a lot of people, and a mere mortal like yourself or myself to be able to handle it with humor.
Yes.
But always people are amazed, I mean, that I've hung in with the church, because it's not a highly valued gift in the church, having a sense of humor. I covet the day when it's a fully appreciated gift. That may not be my lifetime, but it'll happen.
But you must have seen people do appreciate laughing, don't they?
Yes. Yes, they do. Sometimes I think they remember the humorous episode in the sermon more than the punchline of the sermon, you know, the whole point of the sermon. They
Well, I think they do.
The joke about the black and white horse.
They do. I think they do.
Yes.
They like it. People like a joke.
And maybe that's what they really needed to do. Like maybe they really did need to have a laugh.
In the same way that we remember the funny incident that happened in high school, we remember the funny incident that happened in as children, funniest home videos. I mean, the wedding that goes perfectly is less memorable in some ways than the one where something goes wrong.
And when I was at college, training to be a minister, one of the people teaching us said, always have some episodes in your head that you can pull on that you know are humorous to you. And for me, they're kind of slapstick. I don't know if you've ever heard of Fitzroy Harbor.
Oh, I have. I grew up in that little town.
I know.
325 people, Ottawa Valley.
In Fitzroy Harbor in the Ottawa Valley, there's a riding studio and a riding stable.
Stable, yeah, we didn't have studios. We didn't have
studios.
We had
They're called stable.
A store and a gas station, that's it.
And one day, somebody didn't get off their horse in time, and you know how those horses return home, like on automatic pilot,
yeah.
And they actually crunched up against it. Well, to me, that was very funny, and they were not seriously hurt. And at terrible times, when you have to kind of pull it all together, I can remember that slam down of Fitzroy Harbor.
Sheila, that was me.
No, I'm not going down that path.
It was almost me, though.
Yeah.
It was almost me. Those horses did that a lot.
They did. They were trained by sadists.
Well, they did. As soon as they turned the corner, and it was a long way, as soon as they saw that barn,
I know.
They didn't stop.
I know.
Sheer terror.
Hardly alive the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just yearlings on the way home. That's right. Belmont Stakes, here we come.
Right.
So anyway, that was a wonderful gift from Bob Mumford to say, have some stuff that you know is always going to make you kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to make you smile on the outside, but kind of reminds you of that part of your life when you go in to do something or when you're in a stressful situation.
Oh.
And so for me, that's one of them.
And so you just keep those so that you're able to sort of you tell stories and remember them so that it helps to lighten people's...
Sometimes just for me inside. It's just like
inside.
opening the file just for me, and it kind of just gives me the positive energy from that to take into whatever is happening next.
I suppose that's true. I mean, often when something funny happens, say earlier in the week, I will carry it with me for a few days, and
right.
And even somebody will say, Brad, oh, you know, what's so funny? And I mean, I don't really want to tell the story because it has nothing to do with where I'm sitting, you know, where I am at that point in time, but it's just something that sort of lightens the few days that follow.
And part of that is why spirituality and humor are difficult to handle, because spirituality is like sexuality in its uncontrolledness,
right.
in part. You know, I want to be careful with that. But just like something will catch your eye, and you think, who was that?
Right.
Something will strike you as funny, And it's sometimes sort of beyond your ken. You never thought, like if somebody told a joke about such and such, you'd find it humorous. So there's a part of humor that's uncontrolled, that's kind of a little effervescent, a little connection with the part of you that isn't kind of always under the control of our personal.
And we do have our own kind of humor, don't we? Like, I mean, and different cultures have different humor, right? Like, so
Yeah.
the British have a kind of dry, and the French may like farce or something, or
That's right.
Americans, Canadians, and Canadians are quite funny, aren't we?
I
And
think
I
we're
think
right.
We're very funny. You know?
I think we're great. Yeah.
So maybe we have learned to laugh at ourselves. That's the other thing. We don't have very much time. We have to go soon, but we need. It's helpful to learn to laugh at ourselves, isn't it?
It's so crucial. That, I think one of the things is if we give up laughing at others and just increase the humorous embrace of ourselves, and I think that adds years to our lives. I mean, I don't think that when you're laughing at yourself, your ulcer can grow.
No, and you're not taking yourself quite so seriously.
No, that's
And in the
right.
end, it isn't that serious, is it? I mean, we're
No,
only
we need
here
to lighten up on ourselves. The serious problem will exist. It's
still there.
It's still there. But we can lighten up on us.
and just enjoy, and it helps us enjoy life
Yes, and it helps us enjoy the people too.
and spirit.
Hmm.
Anyways, I want to thank you for being here on Pressure Point. It's been great fun, Shelagh. And yes, it's been great fun. Very just relaxed and good.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. Great. I've been talking with Shelagh MacKinnon, who is a United Church minister and a humorist, and we've been talking about spirituality and humor. Thanks for joining us on Pressure Point. I'm Brad Newcombe.